Hey guys, this is our first comment response. We're going to be doing these weekly, or it's probably the second one maybe, where we look at a comment that you guys left on a video and we respond to it. Generally, it's something that we just wanted to expand on or something we left out of the original video that we wanted to talk about. This was a comment left on Iron Flame, talking about use of Gaelic words in the book. And to give a really quick recap of why we're talking about it, the book uses Gaelic words and then they're not pronounced at all like that. They're just completely, the author didn't take any time to do it. And in the video, this happened. I'll play the clip very quickly.
So the names have an influence, but the pronunciation is not that. It's what she wanted.
That's fine. That's nitpicky.
That's what I thought for a minute. But the thing about it is that it would take so little time for her to, like, literally after the TikTok, I could pronounce them correctly, and that was like 60 to 70 seconds.
But what if she didn't want to?
Well, okay, so the point is that you should not be using another minority culture's names to add spice to your world without actually even pronouncing them correctly. We're back from a clip with different shirts.
Oh my gosh.
Katie, why don't you read this comment?
At Futch Slug, wow, what an interesting name, said, slight correction. The language she took words from is actually Scottish Gaelic, pronounced Gaelic, while the language pronounced Gaelic is the Irish language. Love the vid though, just wanted to clarify. Edit. To be honest, the issue to me of her mispronunciation, misuse, other than it being her using an endangered language with no concern for it, is mostly that it is so indicative to me of the larger problem with her work, which is that it's surface level and empty of any substance. Literally, quote, this would be cool, maybe, and then no further thought, research, or development of ideas, LMFAO.
And I thought that was a really good point to bring in. Katie, do you want to re-go over what you were saying about, because you had said like, oh, that is a nitpick, and you were just talking a minute ago about how, do you want to restate that or re-talk about it?
Personally, I was just playing devil's advocate, middle ground. It's because I was trying to be the, like, you know, the person who is like, this book isn't so bad. We need a little bit of that to curb the edge of criticism. And so that way there's also a little bit of discussion back and forth. Mm-hmm. So, but in general, no, that's 100% a really great point to make. I like that because it's almost like a little thesis for a research paper, is just like the mispronunciation of the language itself representing a larger cavity underneath the issues that already immediately are apparent.
Okay, so two things. One, I think it's really true that it is kind of just indicative of how little care she took in it. The kingdom is named Navarre, which is Spanish, and then there's a character named Cisneros at one point, which is like just like randomly, and you're like, that you just picked some random things, and it makes no sense. This isn't a kingdom with distinct places, and they even talk about how it's been homogenized, so you would think the names would be more homogenized than that. And so, like, yeah, it's indicative of the world, of how little world building there is.
If you're gonna use other languages in that, if you're gonna use it, then I think the whole point of using it is for that pronunciation and that spelling, isn't it? So you wanted to, you know, dabble in those arts. Why not do the artwork with the right, you know, material? You know what I'm saying with my metaphor here?
That is actually a really good point. And that was the other thing I was going to talk about, is that this is Gaelic, which I believe is the more Scottish version, and Gaelic is the Irish one, like they were saying.
I did not know any of this, by the way. That's really cool.
Somebody linked a video, actually, which I guess I'll link here, talking about the history of it. I watched part of it and how it went from Ireland to Scotland. And the thing is that it being an endangered language is also interesting in that the author doesn't necessarily have a responsibility to do this, but it could have been cool for the author to, this could have been an opportunity to teach people more about the language, or at least how to pronounce things correctly. You know, media is actually a really good way of preserving culture. She could have put in as like a word, and it would have felt kind of organic as like a world building detail, that this is how it's pronounced. I had a friend who was writing a story, and the main character's name was Shirsa, which is spelled Soarse, so you would think it would be pronounced Sorsa.
Wait, isn't it Saoirse?
Yeah, it's Saoirse, like inertia is the way she says it. And in the book, I was like, hey, you know what you could do for the reader is just have somebody mispronounce it at the beginning as like, oh, this person is ignorant of their culture, and then that becomes a world building detail and a way to characterize the character of, like, she doesn't even correct him because she's so used to it at this point. And so if you think about it, language can be very integral to the story. If you remember Tolkien, his big thing was languages. I mean, he made the languages, and then he made the world around them. He was a linguist. He really cared about this stuff. And like, dead languages can come back to life. I think it's Hebrew, which was a written language, and then after Israel came about, they made it a spoken language, or it was spoken and then they made it written. I don't remember
Wouldn't it be
which,
spoken
but
and then written?
I
would
don't
think that.
remember. It was one of the two. Sorry guys, I should have done research, but I didn't. But you can revitalize a dead language in that way. And culture can really become that. So there was a game called Never Alone.
Wait, why does that sound familiar?
It's made by, or it was part of an attempt to save or preserve some of the stories of Inuit culture and the circumpolar natives. And like, it's a little side scroller and you play like a girl and she's got like the thing and she goes through different of their stories and tales. And there's like little videos in it of how they do like bone carving and things like that. And they found, and it was kind of a way of preserving their culture in a medium that people would find accessible. And so that could have been something she did. Again, she doesn't necessarily have a responsibility to do that, but it could have been a really cool thing.
I think it really would have given her credibility for a lot of people too. It's because a lot of people that, maybe I'm making a broad statement here, but a lot of people who read fantasy, not everyone, but a lot of people like are into a lot of those things, right? History, language, because it's literature. So they're already going to be very interested in probably know a thing or two prior to reading your book. So by doing that, I feel like it immediately discredits her as a, I don't know, maybe not responsible, because like you said, it's not her responsibility to do that. But in a certain way, there's like this natural, inherent, like an artist must bring beauty to the world type of thing. Well, like a writer must bring back, like, you know, the things that they're sourcing.
So because we're almost out of time, again, these are only going to be 10 minutes. Yeah, she at the very least should have pronounced them correctly. This is a smaller culture. It's marginalized. It's an endangered language. It would have taken her literally about 90 seconds to pronounce these things correctly.
I can't help but wonder why not, though.
She's lazy. I think it like,
Is it really just that, though?
I think literally it's she didn't think it was an important thing to do. I think literally she probably was just like, oh, I'm going to pick this name. It looks cool. And then later somebody was like, you know, Gaelic, it's pronounced Gaelic and it's an endangered language. And we're a little annoyed you're not pronouncing it correctly. And she like kind of backpedaled a little bit, because now in interviews she pronounces them somewhat correctly from what I understand. It was one specific one when the book came out that it didn't.
I just think it's wild that it's like a detail like that, which is like the names of things. Now, granted, you know well that I mispronounce everything I say. I've gotten called out on it on multiple
I mispronounce
videos.
things constantly on this, and I don't even necessarily try sometimes because I'm just not going to be able to. But if you're an author, that's different than just putting out.
Well, I just feel like when she made the audiobook, or that like the publishing house hired the audiobook person, like why wouldn't they ensure that at least during the audiobook reading that it was pronounced?
I don't know. They really should have, and they just really didn't. And again, that she should have done that at a minimum, and at maximum, she could have done something really cool. And that is almost exactly 10 minutes. That's 9 minutes and 42 seconds. And
Nice
thank you guys.
job.
Check out our longer videos.